You know, I even told them, you notice that in our food drives used to have would be full of kids.
That's Luz. She runs what she calls a food pantry drive-through. The nonprofit that Luz works for has a primary focus on supporting the children in the local school system who need that support the most. The idea behind Luz's food pantry drive-through was simple. The food pantry would prepare boxes of grocery items and announce a day for drive-through. As parents were picking up their children from the local school, they could also swing by the food pantry and receive a box or bag of supplemental food for that family to take home. In the beginning, it was obvious this food was getting to the children who needed it.
The kids would be in the car and see the different each one of us that work there. You know what I'm saying? Because they would recognize Miss Rosemary. They recognize my coworkers because each one of them are planted in the school. And so they would see if they were at the middle school, they knew it was Miss Collins, and and they say, "Oh, here's who so and so," right? They recognize kids will go through the drive-through.
Now, though, things are not as clear. The local county food program, what some people refer to as food stamps,
Food stamps are behind 8 weeks. They're behind in processing it.
there is need everywhere. This food drive-through was specifically designed for children in the school system and to make it easier for parents to pick them up from school and also get a box of food. So it was designed to coincide with the time that the primary and middle schools released students. As the need grew, people started lining up for the drive-through before any school even released. This created another problem. The children were no longer in the cars with their parents coming to get the boxes.
The last couple drive-throughs I've had, there've been rarely any kids in the car. Rarely any kids in the car, because how could they be? If you're lined up at 2:30, there's no way you had time to go pick your kid up from school and get in my line, you know?
The high need and lack of children in the cars that staff could recognize made it harder to verify that boxes of food were reaching the exact families this specific nonprofit was trying to help. To make matters even worse, the lines of cars waiting for the food pantry to open were arriving earlier and earlier. The lines growing so long that they began to block traffic on public roads. One day, this led to the police arriving and telling Luz she either had to close the drive-through or immediately start serving cars in order to clear the traffic blockage. Luz opened the drive-through early and tried the best she could to verify as many people as possible were families with children in the school system. Yet, the need was so great that all of the boxes of food prepared were soon gone, and the food drive-through closed hours early. Luz felt something was wrong here. Yet, there was no way to tell whether the current people she was serving were families with children in the school district or not. That's when Luz got a call.
I had a girl that came by. She called me because she missed the drive-through. She said, she didn't understand, maybe she didn't. She didn't know. She just called because, hey, I thought the drive-through was today, and she said I came back after I picked up my kid from school and didn't see anybody there. So I call her back, and she tells me she has a kid at the primary school, which is the pre-K through third grade. So it's the youngest, smallest group. So they get out first. They release first from school. She said by the time she went and picked her kid up, circled back around, we were already done. And she lives directly across from my job. There's a set of apartments right across from the street from my job. She lives right there. If she couldn't get there in time, who are these people that are out here making my line at 2:30 in the afternoon?
It is worth taking a moment here to recognize what occurred. This mother had a child in the primary school. Her child was one of the first children who would be released. She lived in an apartment across the street from the food pantry. She is exactly who this program was designed to help. She had the shortest drive to reach the food pantry, since it was literally on the way home from school. With all that, she was still not early enough to receive a box of food due to the long lines of cars, which caused the pantry drive-through to close early.
And so that's this girl's situation, the one that called and left me the message. And I called her and I said, hey, if you are able to, if you can come by today, I will get you a box. I'll get you some food.
She met the young mother and gave her the box of food, and she had this experience.
She came by, she was in tears, telling me how that she was a diabetic and she couldn't get the food that she needed to eat, but she needed to get something for her kids to eat. She said just whatever. She said, and she said that she knew that she would be able to come here and get food because we were having the food drive. And when she got here and she saw that the food was all gone, we had passed everything out, she was in despair. She just cried because she didn't know what else to do.
This young mother was the embodiment of why programs and nonprofits like the one Luz works for exist. Even women like her are falling through the cracks.
Somebody like that I could have been able to help that day of the food drive, and I felt really bad because she, of all people, she needed food. It's just obvious I'm going to have to vet people and do something different.
This situation is bad for everyone. The nonprofit has difficulties reporting back to funders. The parents who do get the boxes of food have to wait in line for hours for the food drive-thru to open and be served. Some of the people most in need are still not being served.
How am I going to do this? How am I going to vet people for the people that need food? How am I going to do it?
Here's the thing. I don't believe this needs to happen. It's possible to use technology to solve these problems. And over the next 3 parts, I want to explain exactly how we can build a web app that this nonprofit can deploy. In the next part, we're going to look at how this app can be funded, even on a nonprofit budget. And finally, in part 4, we're going to talk about the ecosystem that needs to be set in place to support this technology long term. If you're ready, let's get started. So in part 1, we met Luz. She works for a nonprofit food pantry. The food program she runs is desperately trying to solve these problems. Verify that families with children in the school system receive priority. Families who do receive boxes often have to line up and wait for hours to get their box of food. Some of the families most in need can't make it to the drive-thru in time to receive any food. Given these problems, how can an app possibly help? Well, in this section, we're going to go over exactly how an app could help and what such an app would need to do. First, let's set the context for how I believe we need to think about the problem. All of the problems mentioned above are similar to the same set of problems faced by small businesses and restaurants. Verify that customers get their order, reduce wait times in drive-thrus and lessen the burden on the customer, make it easier for those with transportation constraints to get their food. This means the context of a small restaurant is a good starting point for our app. We can call it the Feeding Families app. After signing up, the home screen will have a video telling the account owner how to verify the account. The verification process itself will be left up to the nonprofit. But since some of the nonprofit employees are embedded in the school system, these employees can oversee the verification. This verification would need to happen at least once a year. Verified accounts, and only verified accounts, will see new options appear in the app. They will be able to place an order for a box of food from the food drive. After placing the order, it will be received in advance by the nonprofit. This request can then be approved and a box of food can be set aside specifically for that family. Now, parents coming to pick up their child from the school system can log into the website from their phone, receive the confirmation code, and instead of having to wait in line, they can arrive whenever the drive-thru is open and give their code and immediately receive a box of food. For families in most need, who have transportation constraints, they will be allowed to request a food delivery. This will result in a DoorDash driver delivering that box of food directly to that family, paid for out of a special fund collected by the nonprofit. This app would ensure verification, eliminate wait times for verified families, and can help even the highest need families.